Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 14th Pan Asia Farmers Exchange Program. This is the day 4 of the 5-day webinar that we will be holding until tomorrow, November 20. Our session for today is about the experiences in commercial growing of biotech crops. And I am your moderator for today. I am Maria Emeru B. Rodriguez. You can call me Mini for short. I am the Vice Chair of the CropLife Philippines Seeds Committee and currently the Seeds and Traits Regulatory Manager of Syngenta Philippines. I would like to welcome all the participants from Asia Pacific, namely um, Australia, China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, India, and Pakistan. Okay. So before I introduce to you our first speaker, let me just give some points to remember during the duration of this program. First, please type your questions at the Q&A section anytime. So just a reminder, we would really appreciate if you can first find the chat, not the chat box, but the Q&A box. So it's at the bottom of your screen after near the participants tab. So kindly write your questions there anytime during the duration of the program. And then secondly, the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If there are questions that are not accommodated or answered during the session due to time constraint, this will be answered through our Q&A box by our resource speakers or via email. And then thirdly, e-certificates will be given only to participants who will be able to attend the 5-day program. Certificates will be sent to your registered email address. Number 4, so same as yesterday, there will be a $20 question at the end of the session. So please stay until our session ends. Okay? So hopefully those housekeeping rules or reminders are fine with you. Okay, now, so let us now proceed with the session proper. So I am excited to tell you that our speakers for today are farmers, which are considered as our modern day heroes. We also refer to them as our frontliners, especially during this challenging time of pandemic. Our dear farmers come from Australia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Pakistan. They will be sharing their own experiences in growing biotech crops. So for our first speaker is a dryland broadacre farmer from Great Southern Western Australia. The farming runs in her family. So alongside with her husband, sister, brother-in-law, and parents, her family business owns and manages 9,000 hectareage and produces canola, wheat, barley, oats, hay, wool, and sheep meat, predominantly for the export market. Our speaker believes that the science is the heart of agriculture. Her involvement in advocacy has been an important aspect of her career, including issues such as access to GM technology and live export. She has held roles as a policy director, Pastoralists and Graziers Association committee member, and has involvement in national policy issues. So to share her experience in growing GM canola, let us all welcome back Miss Belinda Murray, or you may call her Bindi. So Bindi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today and share some of my experience. So I will hopefully master the technology and share my screen. My presentation is about GM canola technology and our farming business. And that's a picture from one of the higher points on our farm. So just to give you some context about where we farm, this is a map showing sort of the inherent soil quality across the world. And you can see that the pink and the white areas are the areas of inherently low soil fertility. And the arrow points to where we are, which is one of the pink areas. So one of the big challenges for us is our ancient soils, which have low levels of fertility and also water holding capacity. We also have limited rainfall. So because we're dry land, rain fed, the timing and amount of rain that we receive is the key driver of our annual production. And we also have a very narrow window called our growing season, and that's the time where there is enough moisture for us to plant and for the plants to grow and establish before the soil temperature drops. So this is just the last 10 years showing the variation in our growing season rainfall. So you can see 142 millimetres in our growing season is the lowest, up to 432. And in those years, waterlogging can become an issue. So this just gives you a bit more information about our farm. The very small pin that you can see gives you the location within Western Australia and Australia. And then the Google Earth shows you that our farm is actually, you may see the circles there, it's part of a very old river system. And it's very variable. So within our farm, we have everything from deep, white, low fertile soils up to rich chocolate loams. So the total area of our farm is 9,000 hectares, but the productive area is 6,700. And within that, each year, we have about 3,500 to 4,000 hectares for cropping. And the remainder we use as pastures, and we use them to produce livestock for sheep, meat, and for wool. So within our cropping enterprise, it is dry land. So rain-fed, there is no irrigation at all, and that is common basically for the entire state. The area of crops that we grow, we only grow crops in winter. We don't really have, it's a Mediterranean climate, so we don't have enough rainfall to produce any more than one crop per year. And the area of crop that we grow varies depending on the agronomic rotation and also on the forecast gross margins and profits for each of the crop types. And our season runs from the break of the season around the 25th of May, and then normally we harvest our crops. We're harvesting now, actually harvesting canola right now, and we harvest at the start of November. So last time when I got to speak to the Farmers Exchange, people were very interested in the canola operations. So what we have here is in the top left-hand corner is our planting, and you can see that this has been planted before the rain, so there is no germination, and this is where GM canola is absolutely important for us because we don't have any tillage. We go straight into the paddock and plant, and no tillage is required, and we rely on chemical control to be able to protect our crops once they're planted from weeds and diseases. So you can see in the next picture there that sort of shows our entire team. So that's our entire farm staff, plus there are a few small children from my family in there as well. But it's quite a small staff for the number of, for the amount of activity that we do. And then also in the background, you can see there our self-propelled boom spray. So the boom spray has a spray width of 36 meters. And it's very busy and our main tool that we have to protect our crops and let them grow well during the growing season. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see canola there, which we've cut and placed into a swath to allow it to dry, but protect the pod and allow it to stay protected in case we have any unseasonal rain or hail events. Because the other picture, which you can see, we're using a harvester to direct head it. If we have unseasonal rain, it can be subject to shedding, and the shedding can cost you up to a tonne per hectare in terms of yield loss. So the role of GM canola in our system, it's absolutely crucial for weed control, and that's both in the short term and also in the long term. So resistance is an issue because I've said instead of relying on tillage, we rely on in-crop chemical control. So managing and combating resistance is really important. In the last 2 years, we purchased a new farm, and with that new land, we also managed to get a whole lot of weed burden and some very big resistance issues. So GM canola is going to be a crucial part of that system until we're able to break the back of that resistance issue. It also gives us great rotation between broadleaf and cereals. So dry sowing, which I've already mentioned, is a complete game changer in our drying climate. So it's now standard practice to dry sow our canola due to our ability to control ryegrass in crop. It's also really important for paddocks that are returning from pasture into crop because they've been able to naturally grow and develop over those 2 years. There can be quite a variety of weeds in there. It's also really important for paddocks where hay is not a suitable rotation. So the cutting of hay and oaten hay requires a very flat, very consistent topography in the paddocks, and not all of our paddocks are able to do this. And the really key thing for us is that we're able to spell grass selective herbicides. They've become under a huge pressure for resistance in Western Australia. And we can use Roundup Ready canola to set up the paddocks for long-term sustainable cropping rotations. There are, however, some risks with GM canola in our system. And one of the things is that it does have a higher input cost at the start. And that mainly relates to the seed because you're paying for the technology upfront rather than paying for increased fertilizer and so on and inputs afterwards. It does shift the cost to the very start of the season. So quite often as a business, we're taking those costs on before we even know whether we will have enough rain to sustain the crop or whether the crop will fail. One of the other things with the West Australian system is that our main grain handler does segregate between CAG, which is genetically modified canola, and CAN, which is traditional canola. So we have to make sure that all of our processes and systems and record keeping ensures that we keep that segregation not just on farm, but also all the way through to delivery and contracting of our grain. And because in the system we have the split between the CAN and the CAG, in our environment, there is normally a higher price for the conventional canola because it has other markets. And we never know what the spread will be. So how much the difference between those two prices for CAG and CAN will be at the time of sowing. And it varies a lot by the time of selling. So this is some information about the canola performance on our farm. So we grow 3 types of canola. We grow a very small amount of hybrid, which is the purple column. And then the main 2 things that we grow is conventional canola in the blue and a GM canola in the teal colour. So the yield on this year was not very good because we had a heat stress event and a drying event in spring. And you can see that it had a really big impact. The GM canola performed incredibly well. And so one of the things that you would look at this and say, well, it's quite obvious, you should be growing all GM canola. However, when we look at some of the other aspects, you can see from the graph on the left-hand side, which is the farm gate pricing, so the price that we receive on farm. And you can see there's quite a difference between that. The spread that I was talking about between the CAN and the CAG is quite big. So you can also see on the far right-hand side, the variable costs. There is a higher cost to us to grow canola, to grow the GM canola, but we have a much higher income. So it's about risk management for us, including it in making sure we include both conventional and GM canola in our programs. So in summary, we have been growing GM canola for 5 years now, and it's an incredibly useful tool to have in our toolbox. We also are very happy now to have the government restrictions that were specific to our state removed so that we know with confidence we will be able to grow GM canola into the future. It's really important and it increases our sustainability and of our farming practices in our drying climate. Thank you very much for listening and for taking the time to hear my story.
Thank you, Bindi. Thank you for the interesting presentation, and you never get tired of being with us in the Farmers Exchange. Thank you for sharing how useful GM canola is in Australia. Okay, yeah, just stay put for the Q&A later. Moving on to the next, we'll be presenting a video about the PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI. So hopefully I pronounce it correctly. It's a government-owned estate whose main business activity is the production of sugar. They are also involved in the production of alcohol and spirits from molasses and the production of gunny sacks from canna fiber and plastic sacks. And now, Mr. Alex Docmanto and Dr. Normala Darsono of the PTPN and the Biotech Seeds Director of CropLife Indonesia, Mr. Alex Suherman, will now take us for a quick virtual tour for us to learn about Indonesia's GM sugarcane. So now let's play the video, please.
PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI merupakan salah satu anak perusahaan dari PT Perkebunan Nusantara III Holding Perkebunan yang berdiri sejak tahun 1996 dengan komoditas utama berupa produk gula dan turunannya. Berkantor pusat di Surabaya, Jawa Timur, mencakup 15 pabrik gula, 1 pabrik karung, 1 pabrik alkohol dan spiritus, serta 1 unit usaha strategis yang tersebar di wilayah Jawa Timur. PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI memiliki visi menjadi perusahaan agroindustri yang unggul di Indonesia, dengan tujuan untuk memberikan pelayanan terbaik demi kesejahteraan bersama. Guna mendukung ketahanan pangan di Indonesia, PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI melalui Pusat Penelitian Sukosari di Lumajang mengembangkan tebu transgenik sebagai solusi untuk permasalahan lahan kering sehingga mampu mendapatkan produktivitas lebih baik dibandingkan tebu konvensional.
PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI merupakan salah satu anak perusahaan dari PT Perkebunan Nusantara III Holding dengan komoditas utama berupa produk gula dan turunannya. Saat ini, PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI telah mengembangkan tebu transgenik yang diteliti lebih dari 10 tahun dan sudah diaplikasikan pada lahan milik sendiri, serta telah mendapatkan sertifikasi secara resmi pada tahun 2019. Seperti yang kita ketahui, permasalahan terjadi pada lahan sawah pertanian yang biasanya ditanami tebu telah beralih fungsi menjadi pemukiman atau kawasan industri, sehingga dibutuhkan tebu yang tahan pada lahan kering atau berpengairan kurang. Harapan kami ke depan, tebu transgenik ini menjadi salah satu solusi untuk lahan kering, sehingga bisa memenuhi kebutuhan tebu giling di lingkungan PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI, serta mendukung tercapainya ketahanan pangan nasional. Selain itu, besar harapan kami agar tebu transgenik ini nantinya dapat diterima oleh petani secara luas, guna memajukan industri gula di Indonesia.
Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Nama saya Alex Hukmanto dari CropLife Indonesia. Saat ini di pagi yang cerah dengan latar belakang gunung, kita berada di wilayah Sukosari, Kabupaten Lumajang. CropLife Indonesia bekerja sama dengan PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI membuat video ini sebagai media edukasi bahwa kita Indonesia telah mampu mengembangkan produk rekayasa genetik. Hadir bersama saya pada pagi hari ini salah seorang karyawan dari PT PN 11 yang akan bercerita banyak tentang kondisi perkebunan tebu Biotech yang ada di PT PN 11. Dengan Bapak siapa? Boleh diperkenalkan?
Perkenalkan Pak, nama saya Denny Bagus Surendra dari PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI. Saya bekerja di PT Perkebunan Nusantara XI sejak tahun 2010. Kami di Pusat Sukosari mengelola tebu pembenihan ya, termasuk tebu bibit produk rekayasa genetik.
Lalu untuk area ini kira-kira luasnya berapa hektar ya Pak?
Untuk tebu Biotech ini yang kami kelola di Pusat Sukosari semenjak tahun 2019 itu kami tanam sekitar 1,5 hektar dan nanti itu bisa dijadikan untuk tebu giling sekitar 1.900 hektar Pak. Itu untuk memenuhi kebutuhan dari unit pabrik gula se-PTPN 11.
Jadi sejak tahun 2019 ya Pak ya?
Iya Pak, karena semenjak tahun 2019 sertifikat resmi dari UPT telah diterbitkan.
Sekarang saya sedang berada di pusat penelitian PTPN 11, tempat di mana penelitian tentang tebu biotek dilakukan. Tepatnya berada di Laboratorium Kultur Jaringan. Mari ikuti saya. Saya mau mewawancari salah satu tokoh kunci di belakang layar yang merupakan riset utama dalam pengembangan tebu biotek di Indonesia. Mari kita ikuti. Selamat pagi, permisi, maaf mengganggu.
Pagi Pak Alek.
Dengan siapa kami berbicara, boleh dikenalkan kepada teman-teman?
Oke, saya Nani Trismati, Kepala Pusuit Sukosari PTPN 11. Mungkin ada yang bisa saya bantu?
Tolong dijelaskan ke kita Bu, terkait riset biotek di tempat ini seperti apa?
Oke, baik. Mari ikut saya Pak Alek. Pak Alek, ini lab kultur jaringan Pusuit Sukosari PTPN 11. Tebu transgenik kita miliki mulai dari jenjang tinggi. Pengen tahu sejarahnya? Ini diteliti lebih dari 10 tahun. Dari tahun 1999, kita kerjasama dengan PT Ajinomoto, diteliti selama 10-11 tahun, kita adakan penelitian, baru tahun 2013 dirilis. Tahun 2010, kita mulai pengembangan pembibitan dan penelitian. Tahun 2011, kita mendapatkan izin dari KLH tentang keamanan hayati. Tahun 2012, kita mendapatkan izin sertifikat keamanan pangan. Tahun 2013 kita baru rilis. Tetapi perjalanannya belum berhenti di situ Pak Alek. Tahun 2018 kita baru mendapatkan sertifikat keamanan pakan. Dan tahun 2019 baru kita mendapatkan sertifikat pembibitan. Baru setelah itu kita boleh resmi mendistribusikan ini baik ke TS maupun ke TR.
Lalu alasan PTPN 11 mengembangkan riset tebu biotek ini didasari oleh apa ya Bu?
Ada dua alasan PTPN 11 mengembangkan ini. Kita memandang ke depan. Satu, lahan perkebunan untuk komoditas tebu semakin hari semakin bergeser dari sawah ke lahan tegal. Artinya harus ada varietas yang tahan kering karena luasan tegal semakin banyak. Kedua, baik itu di lahan sawah pun mengalami kendala. Kendalaannya adalah keterbatasan sumber air. Sehingga di sawah pun membutuhkan varietas yang tahan kering. Itu alasannya, dua alasan.
Luar biasa Bu, tolong dijelaskan dong ke saya, ini keunggulan produk riset tebu biotek dibandingkan dengan yang konvensional itu seperti apa? Apa yang mencolok dari sini?
Baik, keunggulan dari transgenik tahan kering adalah di dalam varietas ini kita sisipi gen G-betain. Dia punya karakter bisa membentuk panjang akar lebih panjang, distribusi perakaran lebih luas, sehingga volume akar lebih besar atau lebih banyak daripada indukan aslinya. Sehingga sama-sama jenis BL misalnya, BL transgenik, dia akan mempunyai daya tahan kering karena akarnya lebih panjang dan lebih luas daerah perakarannya. Itu.
Terima kasih banyak Ibu untuk penjelasannya, luar biasa. Tentunya Ibu punya harapan untuk riset tebu biotek di Indonesia akan seperti apa atau mau dibawa kemana ini tebu biotek?
Karena kita sejak penelitian menunjukkan, membuktikan bahwa tebu biotek ini, tebu transgenik ini mempunyai produktivitas yang lebih tinggi, kami berharap setelah semuanya resmi, legal, kita akan kembangkan untuk semua masyarakat pertebuan di Indonesia. Kita akan mulai kembangkan dari lab ini. Kita mulai dari bibit jenjang tinggi sampai nanti ke tebu giling. Mungkin itu demi kemajuan pergulaan di Indonesia.
Sekarang saya sudah berpindah ke lokasi kebun HGU Jatiroto, Kabupaten Lumajang. Di pagi yang cerah ini sedang ada pekerja kebun yang sedang mengelola tebu biotek. Juga nanti akan mendampingi saya Kepala Kebun Wilayah Jatiroto. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Dengan Bapak siapa ini saya berbicara?
Perkenalkan, nama saya Bayu Nugroho. Saya sudah bergabung di PT Perkebunan Nusantara 11 masuk tahun ke-8 dan saya sudah mengelola tebu biotek masuk tahun kedua.
Pak Bayu, di kawasan kebun HGU PTPN 11 ini luasnya berapa hektar Pak yang sudah ditanami tebu biotek?
Untuk luas total yang saya kelola sekitar 500 hektar. Saya di wilayah Sukosari, saya mengelola sekitar 11 hektar tebu biotek.
Untuk kawasan kebun yang dikelola sama Pak Bayu, ada berapa pekerja Pak?
Untuk di kebun Sukosari wilayah timur, saya memiliki 5 mandor, setiap mandor memiliki 30 pekerja. Seperti ini. Jadi praktis saya membawai sekitar 150 orang pekerja.
Boleh diceritakan kepada kita Pak, perbedaan yang cukup signifikan antara tebu konvensional dengan tebu biotek. Seperti apa Pak kondisinya?
Kebetulan sekali kita sekarang berada di tengah-tengah antara tebu biotek dan tebu konvensional. Yang pertama masalah tipologi wilayah Sukosari dulu. Sukosari sendiri ini termasuk tanah tegal. Tebu biotek yang kita kembangkan memang terkhusus untuk di tanah tegal. Dia akan muncul kelebihannya itu pada saat ditanam di tanah yang kering, termasuk Sukosari. Untuk yang kedua masalah morfologi. Di bulan yang sama, di tahun kemarin, yang tebu biotek ini jauh sekali lebih hijau daripada yang konvensional. Untuk yang terakhir protas, untuk yang tebu biotek, protas per hektar 127,4 ton per hektar. Untuk tebu konvensional 98,7 ton per hektar. Saya rasa ini cukup signifikan ya.
Tebu transgenik Indonesia. Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Thank you, Indonesia team, for that very educational video. Thank you, Mr. Alex, Dr. Normala, and the PTPN team. So we saw the importance of the GM sugarcane in terms of the survival in the dry field and also due to the limited source of water. So for now, let's have this time for the Q&A. For our two presentations, may we call Ms. Bindi and Dr. Normala Darsano, the principal researcher of the GM Sugarcane. So let me check first the question. So for the first question, it's from Mr. Asif Salim Shah. This is for Bindi. Okay. So Bindi, please explain more about the mechanical harvesting of canola. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are two ways that we can do it. And there was one picture in my presentation where you saw the canola was sitting in a long row. We have a machine that comes across and the width of that is about 12 meters. And it cuts the plant and then brings it together into a row and places it on the ground with the stalks facing in one direction. And this allows it to dry, but also because it's very brittle and the seeds will shed very easily, when it dries, the pod stays nice and solid and strong. So we leave that in the field to dry for at least 10 days, but it can be up to 4 weeks. At the end of that time, we have a harvester, mechanical harvester, and it has first a drum that brings the product in, and then it has a concave. Apologies for my trying to show with my hands. It has a drum that spins around like this against a concave, and by rubbing the crop continuously, the seeds fall through and are caught underneath and separated and are shaken over a sieve, which allows us to separate the chaff and the plant stem product away from the individual seeds. So with the swath canola, we have a special head that is quite small, and it has a belt that continuously feeds the windrows, the rows of canola up into the machine. But when we are direct heaving it, we have a 15-meter front, and it has a knife section which moves. One bit holds the crop, and the knife moves back and forward, and it cuts it and then pushes it into the machine where it goes through the same separation process against the drum. And this allows us to store, it goes into the grain tank and is stored within the machine. And we will have 2 to 3 of these machines operating at one time in the field. And then we will have a chaser bin, which is a tractor with a small container behind it. And it will drive up, and because it's so important for us to harvest quickly, they don't stop. And while they're both driving, they will drive next to each other and continue to drive while they unload and continue harvesting. So we must continue to always harvest while the weather is appropriate for us to keep harvesting. And then from there, it is transferred into a truck and delivered into our bulk handling system. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Bindi. So next question from Milin Damle. So this is for the Indonesia team. It's about the sugarcane. So the first question, what is the biotic stress tolerance technology of sugarcane with hectareage meter water requirement? So I think Miss or Mr. Milind, is asking for the requirements in terms of the water.
Thank you for the question. We don't apa ya? We water the sugarcane, GM sugarcane, twice. First time when the seed in seed development, and secondly when we apply fertilizer. So we don't count the water meter requirement. Only 2 times during planting in fields. About the abiotic stress tolerance, this GM sugarcane has a protein called betaine. This protein function as a protection of cells. So the cells still manage their water in this cell, so they don't dry even the climate getting dry. I think that's the answer. But specifically, I have some presentation to make our audience get more comprehend about GM sugarcane. If I have some about 10 minutes, I think I can explain about it more clearly. Thank you.
Mr. Mala, yeah, so just for everyone's information first, we can see your some of the questions are still the Q&A box. So we will try to answer these questions again via the Q&A box or via the email. So Mr. Mala, yeah, I think you want to present a slide, right? So we can give you around 5 to 10 minutes for that. Would that be fine?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, this is the visual look of GM sugarcane, and this is our head office, and this is our working area divided in 3 regions: West region, Central region, and East region. All of this region is in East Java province. Let's skip this. Okay, there is a increasing trend of usage dry land for sugarcane crops, so we need to make some innovation in new variety which has drought tolerance character. And this is the productivity in dry land. The trend is decreasing, about 63 tons per hectare. And this is a brief information that we about GM sugarcane. Start from research in 1999, and the last certification that we have is in 2018. That is a food safety certification. This is the certification. Environment in 2011, food safety 2012, food safety 2018, and patent crop plant protection in 2016. And this is a visual look. So we also conduct public information. Let me skip this. This is public information for farmers. And this is a farmer experimental field. We also conduct farmer experimental field in the year of 2014-2016. This is a function as field school for farmers, so they can learn and discuss everything about GM sugarcane. And this is the public information that we conduct for journalists. And this is so the impact of public information is GM sugarcane is internationally known. So we have some visitors from foreign sugar company, such as from India and South Africa. Now let's see the performance of N1140. During during assessment period for release, for commercial release of GM sugarcane, we collect many data. One of the data is stability index. Stability index, I assume this data is the productivity potency of GM sugarcane. So in biomass, the productivity potency is around 79 ton per hectare, and in sugar content is around 8.5. This is the data of the real productivity for the last 4 years in PTPN 11. You may see that the average amount of biomass is about 76. This is very close enough to its potency, but the sugar content in average is 7.5 compared to its potency is 8.5. So I think in this sugar content parameter, we need a lot effort to raise the GM sugarcane, to raise the sugar content of GM sugarcane to its potency. I will show you the comparison data. If the GM sugarcane planting in dry zone, left table is dry zone and right table is wet zone. In our company, we classified climate zone with Alderman classification. The left table show us that GM sugarcane has higher biomass productivity in dry zone, but the sugar content still lower than its potency because the potency is 8.5, but in dry zone still 5.7. In the right table on the wet zone, the biomass parameter is higher than its potency, but the sugar content still lower. So I suggest that we still need more effort to raise the sugar content, and then it can achieve its potency. This data is distribution of planting material of GM sugarcane in the last 4 years, and I try to make some trend, and we can see that there is a increasing trend of planting material. So we believe that farmer interest or user interest about this GM sugarcane is rising. So in the next year, we believe that the GM sugarcane give benefit to farmer on biomass and also on sugar crystal. And the conclusion of our short presentation is N1140 biomass shows stability for performance, shows stability performance in dry land, but sugar content is lower than its potency. So we need to increase best practices in agricultural cultivation according to attain the stability index. And the second is N1140 biomass still has good performance in irrigated fields. This is something obvious, but the sugar content is still lower than its potency. So I'm still suggesting that we need to make more effort to in agricultural cultivation to raise the sugar content. And thus, the GM sugarcane is not recommended for irrigated fields. And the last thing, The third, farmer interest on GM sugarcane is increasing. So this indicates the benefit of this variety for farmer and for production of sugar in PTPN 11. I think that's all my presentation. I hope everyone have more information about GM sugarcane, and if any of you have some question or discussion, let me answer you in Q&A or by email. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you again, Ms. Normala. So thank you for sharing the performance data and the further studies that you need to do for the GM sugarcane technology. So for Ms. Bindi and Normala, kindly check the Q&A box again so we can start and continue answering the questions from the participants. Okay, so moving on with our program, I'm now excited to introduce to you our next speaker. So our next model farmer is a successful BT corn farmer from Tarlac, Philippines. So he advocates the use of BT corn because of its impact on his life. So let us now hear his story. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Juanito Rama. So here's the video.
Ako si Juanito Rama ng San Miguel, San Manuel, Tarlac, isang corn farmer po dito sa Central Luzon. At ako po ay 56 years old na po ngayon. Nagsimula po akong magtanim ng GM corn noong 2003. Bali, ang nag-inganyo po sa akin ay isang mga seed company kung saan sila po ang naka-imbento ng GM corn na ito para sa mga kagaya naming mga corn farmer dito sa Central Luzon. Nung una po ay nagda-doubt po kami kasi maraming mga balibalita na ang GM corn daw ay masama sa ating kagaya natin na kukonsulmo, pero dahil po sa kami naman po ay very open naman po kami mga corn farmer, so hindi po kami gaano nahirapan na nagsubok dahil nga nakita namin na siguro ito yung makakapagbigay sa amin ng magandang ani. Dahil nga nababalitan namin itong GM corn ay mas malaki po ang ani kumpara sa ordinary corn. Nung una po kaming nagtatanim ng mais, since 1988 po kami nag-start na nagmais, ay gumagamit lang po kami na binhi na ay ordinary corn. Although yun po ay may mga hybrid na po, kaya lang, ordinary pa po yung bang nilalagyan pa ng mga granule, ina-sprayan pa po ng mga insecticide para makontrol po yung mga mapaminsala na kagaya ng corn borer. Nung unang nagtatanim po kami ng ordinary corn, ay nasubukan po namin na umani lang po ng 8 bag sa 1 hektarya dahil nga doon sa pinsala na dulot ng corn borer. Nung sinubukan po namin, ang itong GM corn ay medyo mataas ang puhunan ng binhi. Pero nung umani po kami, nagulat po kami dahil yung inaasahan namin na ani, kumpara doon sa dati ay mas higit pa sa doble yung inaani namin. Kaya yun po yung napakalaking naibigay ng GM corn para sa aming mga corn farmer. Mas doble po yung inani po namin. Kasi po, yung GM corn ay hindi na po inaatake ng mga insekto, kagaya ng corn borer, kung saan ang corn borer ay malaking kabawasan sa ani ng mga magsasaka. Kaya nung nagtanim na po kami ng GM corn, talagang 100% na po ay walang damage talaga. Kaya siguro masasabi natin na dumoble yung ani namin dahil nga hindi na napinsala. o nasira yung mga mais na tinanim natin. Yung itinatanim po namin ngayon, yung GM corn, yung Roundup Ready corn, yun po yung, ngayon yung mayroon na siyang protection sa PAW, yung double pro na sinasabi nila. Double protection na po yun. Malaki po ang pagbabago ng aming pamumuhay nung kami po ay nagtanim ng GM corn dahil nung ordinary pa lang po yung tinatanim namin ay halos wala kaming kinikita taon-taon. Kung baga, tama-tama lang sa aming pamumuhay, mahirap pa po kami makapagpatayo ng mga konkretong bahay. Pero nung sumubok po kami ng GM corn, sabi ko nga jackpot sa mga corn farmer dahil lahat ng mga sumubok ng GM corn ay umangat ang kanilang pamumuhay dahil sabi ko nga mas dumoble yung ani nila, mas dumoble din po yung kita nila. Kaya siguro makikita natin na kami po ay isang successful na corn farmer dito sa Central Luzon dahil nga sa malaking kita at malaking ani na binibigay ng GM corn dito sa amin. Ay gusto ko pong ibahagi sa lahat po ng mga corn farmer po dito sa buong Pilipinas na hindi pa po nakakasubok na magtanim ng GM corn ay huwag po kayong mag-atubili o magdalawang isip na magtanim po dahil dito po nakikita ko yung kaginhawaan na maibibigay sa ating pamilya. Para sa ganon, lahat ng corn farmer dito sa Pilipinas ay aangat ang kanilang pamumuhay.
Maraming salamat. Thank you, Kajani, Mr. Juanito Rama, for that inspiring story. We are really happy to see that farmers like you are gaining so much from this modern biotech crop. So indeed, this technology is a promising one. So again, for the questions, you may again type it in the Q&A box, and we shall accommodate your questions later at the end of the session. So, okay, for now, let's proceed to our next guest for today. So our next guest would come from Vietnam. So in 2015, Vietnam also started the cultivation of BT corn. So let us now hear how BT corn has impacted the lives of our farmers. May we now call Ms. Vinh Dao and Ms. Le Pham, our colleagues from CropLife Vietnam, to assist our farmers from different provinces of Vietnam, namely Mr. Nguyen Thanh Phong, Mr. Hoang Van Tuyen, and Mr. Hoang Trong Ngai in sharing their experiences.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Le from CropLife Vietnam. We are very honored today to have chance to join and share at the webinar today. And sitting here with me, may I introduce Mr. Nguyen Thanh Phong from Nghe An, Mr. Hoang Trong Ngai from Vinh Phuc, Mr. Hoang Van Tuyen from Sơn La, and Mr. Woodanilling, our interpreter. Before our farmers sharing, we would like to present a short video about GM corn in Vietnam. Thanks, Bowie. So firstly, I would like to introduce Mr. Phong. He is the owner of 100 hectare with almost GM corn in Nghe An. Mr. Phong, the floor is yours.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người. Tôi xin giới thiệu, tôi là Nguyen Thanh Phong, quê là ở Nghệ An.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nguyen Thanh Phong. I am from Nghe An Province, Việt Nam.
Như các bạn đã biết thì là năm 27 tới đây là Việt Nam cũng bị một cái loại sâu là dịch hại, đó là cái sâu ăn lá, người ta gọi là sâu keo mùa thu.
You may know that since 2017, for farmers growing corn like us, we have to suffer from the fall armyworm, which is very create a lot of damage to us.
Vùng đất của tôi sinh sống là tôi làm trên 100 hectare là ngô chuyển gen.
Now I grow 100 hectare of land with GM corn.
Thì là trong cái ngô này thì là cho hiệu quả rất là cao về cái hiệu quả kinh tế cũng như là những cái tác động của môi trường.
By growing this GM corn, I can have a lot of economic benefits as well as the environmental benefits.
Hiện tại dịch hại cái sâu keo này thì nó ăn từ khi bắt đầu trỉa cho đến khi ngô già.
The fall armyworms start infesting our crops since when the corn start to take shape until it grow.
Cho nên là việc phòng trừ rất khó và cũng như là nó hiệu quả, nó tốn về kinh tế cho người trồng ngô.
So fighting against fall armyworm is very difficult and it costs a lot of money.
Cho nên là từ năm 28 cho đến nay thì gia đình chúng tôi là trồng 100 hectare là ngô chuyển gen để là sản xuất là bán cho công ty sữa TH bằng là khối.
And so since 2018, 2 years ago, we started to plant GM corn in 100 hectare of land, and we sell the product for a milk, a dairy company named TH in Vietnam.
Và cho hiệu quả kinh tế cao, cho nên là chia sẻ để cho các bạn biết. Thứ nhất là không bị phun thuốc trừ sâu, thứ hai là về cái cỏ dại thì cũng chỉ cần là mình phòng trừ một lần. Đấy, thì là hiệu quả kinh tế là cao hơn cái giống ngô thường.
And I have a very good economic benefit, so I would like to share with you that if we grow GM corn, we do not have to use pesticide, and to control the weed, the grass, we can only use the herbicide just once.
Nếu như ở mùa hè mà ở quê tôi mà trồng cái ngô thường đó, thì là cái sâu này nó sẽ ăn lá và nó sẽ phá hại, nó không có thu hoạch. Cho nên là nông dân ở Nghệ An chúng tôi là họ chuyển sang họ dùng cái ngô chuyển gen để là chống chịu với cái loài sâu này.
In summer, in our province, if the farmer grow conventional corn, we cannot have any we cannot gain anything because of the fall armyworm that infest that can eat the leaves and the body of the corn. So now in our province, most of the farmers shifted to use to grow GM corn.
Trồng ngô này thì là nếu như các bạn mà có các cái loài sâu ăn lá, sâu đục thân và sâu đục bắp ấy, thì tôi cũng khuyên các bạn là nên sử dụng cái giống ngô chuyển gen này để nó chống chịu với các cái loại sâu và đưa lại cái hiệu quả kinh tế cho người dân, đó như là chính là gia đình của tôi. Chúc là các bạn cũng như nông dân là thành công khi sử dụng cái giống này.
What I recommend for a corn farmer is that if you have a corn borer, or if you have 4 armyworm in your farm, you just need to use GM seeds, and it can bring benefit for you, like it does to my family. And I wish all of you, all the farmers, success in growing your crops. Thank you.
Secondly, may I present Mr. Hoang Van Tuyen from Sơn La Province. He's not only a farmer with many experience with GM corn, but also a provider of GM seed for other farmers in his province. So let's hear from him.
Vâng, tôi xin chào các bạn nhé.
Good morning.
Tôi là Hoang Van Tuyen, hiện nay đang ở Mộc Châu, Sơn La của Việt Nam.
My name is Hoang Van Tuyen. I am now living in Mộc Châu, Sơn La Province, in Vietnam.
Tôi là nông dân nhưng là chủ một trang trại bò sữa có diện tích trồng ngô 4 hectare.
I am a farmer and I am also an owner of a cow farm, and I have an area of land, cropland of 4 hectares.
Tôi đã tiếp cận tới ngô biến đổi gen này từ 2017.
I started to use GM corn since 2017.
Vì gia đình tôi là diện tích đất là nó so với ở trên khu vực tôi ở cũng tương đối là rộng. Thứ hai là gia đình cũng có điều kiện, tức là kinh doanh về cái hạt giống này, nên tôi đã tiếp cận cũng sớm hơn mọi người. Qua quá trình tôi trồng ngô biến đổi gen này, nó thấy có những vấn đề rất thuận lợi cho bà con nông dân chúng ta, tức là về thời tiết, khí hậu thì giống biến đổi gen này nó ok hơn giống thường. Về cái kháng sâu bệnh thì tôi theo dõi thì nó kháng, như ở trên tôi nó kháng được 3 loại sâu. Cái thứ nhất là sâu đục thân, thứ hai là sâu đục trái, và vừa rồi là 2017 trên tôi nó xuất hiện cái sâu keo nữa, là nó kháng được luôn cả sâu keo. Nên từ chỗ đó là cái bà con nông dân của mình là nó lợi nhuận cái là không hạn chế sử dụng thuốc bảo vệ thực vật, giảm được những cái nhân công chi phí cho phun thuốc bảo vệ thực vật. Cái thứ hai nữa là thời tiết mình nó có khắc nghiệt hơn, mình vẫn có thể trồng được. Nhưng nếu mà giống ngô thường mà thời tiết là khắc nghiệt mà không cho phép thì có thể là không khó trồng.
I started accessing the GM corn since 2017, quite earlier compared to other farmers. I have quite a large area of land compared to other farmers, and I also sell the seeds to other farmers. So I started with this GM corn quite early compared to other farmers in Vietnam. And what I observe is that in terms of the climate, the GM corn can live well in even harsh climate. And the second is that it can resist against all the pests that can damage the crop. And for GM corn, at least it can help to resist against 3 types of pests: the corn borer, the worm that eat the corn or the cob, and the 4 army worms. So by using the GM seed, we can reduce. We do not have to use pesticide, So we also do not have to pay for that, and we do not have to pay for people who help us to spray the pesticide. And second one is that it can grow in any climate. It's easier for us to grow them in different kind of climates.
Ngô biến đổi gen khi mà công ty của Việt Nam mà nhập khẩu về thì mà chuyển tới chúng tôi thì mà tiếp cận tới bà con nông dân thì nó rất chậm, vì bà con nó bỡ ngỡ với cái giống ngô mới này. Nhưng quá trình tôi là những người tiên phong mà đi trồng ở trên cái đất Sơn La này là trồng sớm nhất. Khi bà con nhìn theo mình mà làm mà có hiệu quả, sau đó là bà con nông dân của chúng tôi là đã theo tôi để trồng những cái ngô biến đổi gen là càng ngày càng nhiều. Trước khi là một năm có thể tôi chỉ bán được khoảng độ 5 tạ giống thôi. Nhưng hiện tại đến bây giờ là một năm tôi bán tầm khoảng độ 4 đến 5 tấn, 5.000 kg nữa.
At first, companies imported GM seeds, GM corn seeds to Vietnam, and most of the farmers were not familiar with it. But I was among the first farmers to use the GM corn, and I grow GM corn in my land, and farmers around me see what I do and see the productivity and what I get from growing GM corn, and they started to grow GM corn as well. And at first, each year I only sold about 500 kilograms of seeds, but now each year I can sell to other farmers about 4 to 5 tons of seeds for other farmers.
Vâng, trong cái ngô biến đổi gen đấy thì nó sẽ đưa lại cho bà con nông dân là cái lợi nhuận rất lớn. Tức là nếu mà cái công chi phí mà giảm được cái nhân công là nó và thuốc bảo vệ thực vật tầm 3 triệu.
3 triệu trong một hectare.
1 hectare. Còn nếu mà cái năng suất của biến đổi gen thì nó sẽ đạt, nó không bị sâu bệnh, thì mình quản lý sâu bệnh thì nó sẽ đạt được khoảng độ 10% nữa. Thì đang dự tính nó vào khoảng độ 10 triệu trên hectare.
I see that I can get a lot of economic benefits from growing GM corn. First, we can reduce the cost for pesticide of about 3 million Vietnamese dong per hectare, and we can increase the productivity by about 10%. So for each hectare, we can have 10 million Vietnamese dong more, thanks to growing GM corn.
Vâng, lợi nhuận như thế thì tại sao mà bà con nông dân mình không trồng? Cho nên là cái biến đổi gen này thì theo tôi thì bà con nông dân chúng ta trên mọi miền đất nước là nên trồng nó. Vâng.
So we can have quite a remarkable economic benefit from growing GM corn. So I hope that so why should not we use it in our next year farming? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuyen. And last but not least, may I introduce Mr. Hoang Trong Ngai from Vinh Phuc. Mr. Ngai is a farmer leader. He is responsible for 120 hectares of GM corn in his cooperative, and he's also responsible for guiding other farmers in his cooperative to plant GM corn. Please, let's hear from Mr. Hoang Trong Ngai.
Chào.
Hello.
Tôi tên là Hoang Trong Ngai. Tôi đến từ Đức Bắc, Sông Lô, Vinh Phuc, Việt Nam.
My name is Hoang Trong Ngai. I come from Đức Bắc commune, Sông Lô district, and Vinh Phuc Province of Vietnam.
Địa phương của tôi là nằm trên ven vùng sông Lô, đất màu bãi. Từ trước năm 2015 thì thường thường chúng tôi vẫn là trồng ngô thường.
Our land is around a very well-known river in Vietnam, Lo River. And before 2015, we only grew conventional corn.
Sau năm 2015, chúng tôi chuyển sang trồng ngô biến đổi gen.
We started growing GM corn after 2015.
Qua quá trình trồng ngô biến đổi gen, chúng tôi thấy ngô biến đổi gen nó có những cái đặc tính rất là tốt và phù hợp với người dân, là gọi là đó là một cái quý để người dân phát triển sản xuất. Một là cái tính kháng chịu các loại sâu bệnh hại trên ngô. Hai là cây con khỏe, phát triển mạnh. Cái thứ ba là chống chịu được các yếu tố ảnh hưởng của điều kiện thời tiết thiên nhiên.
We see many benefits from growing GM corn. First, it can resist to different types of pests. The second one is that the corn is very strong and it can develop very well. And the third is that it can be adaptable to different climates.
Do đó không phải sử dụng nhiều thuốc bảo vệ thực vật trong quá trình thâm canh cây ngô, đem lại hiệu quả kinh tế cao cho người nông dân.
And we do not have have to use much pesticide, and we can have a lot of economic benefits for farmers.
Đồng thời vì không phải sử dụng nhiều thuốc bảo vệ thực vật thì bảo vệ tốt cái môi trường sống của người làm nông nghiệp.
And as we do not have to use much pesticide, we can protect the environment for farmers.
Thông qua cái sản xuất, chúng tôi rút được một số kinh nghiệm như thế này. Một là tuân thủ cái quy trình kỹ thuật của công ty giống. Cái thứ hai là tuân thủ cái lịch gieo trồng của địa phương. Cái thứ ba là cố gắng đảm bảo cái mật độ trồng để mà đem lại hiệu quả cao trong quá trình sản xuất của người nông dân.
So what I recommend for farmers when they grow GM corn is that first they have to follow the technical instructions from the company that provide us the seeds. The second one is that we have to be strict with the schedule of sowing the seeds. And the third is that we have to have a very reasonable density when we grow, when we sow the seeds on the land.
Từ ngày sản xuất cây ngô biến đổi gen, do điều kiện là hiệu quả được nâng cao, nên cải thiện cơ bản cái cuộc sống của người nông dân.
And since when we started growing GM corn, our livelihood have been improved quite well.
Quá trình đưa cây ngô biến đổi gen vào sản xuất thì người dân là rất yên tâm và gọi là muốn phát triển hơn nữa.
And the people are happy with the GM corn and they want to develop it even further in the future.
Vâng, xin trân trọng cảm ơn.
Thank you very much.
So that's all from our end. If you have any question for our farmers, please feel free to raise it in the Q&A part. Thank you. The floor is back to you, Ms. Emeru.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for your time. So thank you for sharing your experiences in Vietnam, stressing also about the importance of following the technical guidance provided by different companies. And of course, if there are some which came from the government. And also, thank you for stressing about the economic benefit of GM corn there in Vietnam in order to also to combat the pests that you mentioned. You mentioned about the Asian corn borer and the fall armyworm. So thank you again. And then now, let's now proceed to the next section of our session. So for the last speaker, as most of you already know, there are only a few biotech crops which are already approved here in Asia for cultivation. So some farmers in our neighboring countries still do not have this access yet to these crops. So for now, we have a video of a progressive farmer from Pakistan. He's a corn, cotton, and wheat farmer who really wants to have access to these biotech crops. Let us hear what he has to say. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all listen to Mr. Amir Hayat Bandara from Pakistan.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to talk to the participants of the Farmer Exchange Program on the GM Perspective of Pakistan. This is Amir Hayat Bandara. I'm a farmer by profession and the founder of the Agriculture Republic. Agriculture Republic is recognized as a farmer support network for finding innovative policy and practical solutions to national food security and climate change challenges. As an open, inclusive and multi-stakeholder policy discussion and consultation community, it is influencing the agriculture policy at the local and the national level. Before starting my presentation, let me just request you to please stay safe as it is COVID, and take care of yourself and your loved ones. Use masks, and after using masks and the protection equipments, please manage the waste properly, as it is contributing the pollution, and particularly in the developing countries where we have a very limited access to the security of the public health. So we need to be very careful by contributing a little in the pollution. Let me start my presentation on the GM perspective of Pakistan. If I'm going to discuss the geographic position of Pakistan, we have 88 million hectares of area. Our population is increasing at 1.8% annually with 220 million people. Our GDP growth is 2.4% and contributing 20 to 22% in the national gross domestic product. Our arable land, we have 22 million hectares. We are the major growers of wheat, cotton, rice, corn, fruit orchards, sugarcane and sunflower. We have 4 seasons, but unfortunately due to the air pollution, smog, we are actually facing a threat, that is the 5th season of smog. If I am going to discuss the corn market of Pakistan, we have 1 million hectares of cultivated area producing approximately 4.9 million tons of corn, which is being used in poultry feed, silage, for dairy, wet millers like Rafan, Maize Co and food. If we are going to discuss the corn market transition, in spring season of 1990 we were producing around 40 months per acre, which is now, due to the contribution of good seeds and no doubt the good agricultural practices by the farming community, we are reaching at 100 from per acre. And same with the autumn corn, we were yielding around 20 in 1990, and in 2020, after 30 years, we are rating at 70. But again, it is subject to the good practices and the good seeds available for the country. The corn grain consumption, 70% is being utilized in the poultry feed, 10% in dairy, 10% in flours, 5% for other purposes, and 5% for food. The country, as the population is expanding, the poultry growth rate is 8 to 10% in 2018 and 19. The silage industry growth rate is now 13%. So it is very important to enhance the production of the existing crop, not by the area but the crop productivity and the yield per acre. The regulation authorities and biosafety laws, we have Ministry of Climate Change. Environment Protection Authority Agency, Ministry of Food Security and Research with the National Biosafety Guidelines 2005, and we have Pakistan Biosafety Rules 2005. There are 3-tier system and later 2-stage of field trials for the biotech cultivation approval process. The 3-tier system has Institutional Biosafety Committee, Technical Advisory Committee, and later the National Biosafety Committee. Then for the field trials, we have first small-scale confined field trials, and then the large-scale multi-location field trials. And the event and variety hybrid approval system. Sorry. The ongoing research on indigenous transgenic crops in Pakistan are going through National Institute of Genomics and Advanced Biotechnology. We're doing maize, wheat, brassica, potato, groundnut, tomato, and chickpea. Center for Excellence in Molecular Biology is working on maize, cotton, sugarcane, and potato. National Institute of Biotechnology and Genetic Engineering is working on wheat, tobacco, and cotton. University of Agriculture Faisalabad is going for wheat and sugarcane. Ayub Agriculture Research Institute Faisalabad is doing for wheat, cotton, sugarcane, and brassica. ComSearch Institute of Information Technology Islamabad is going for peas. Foreman Christian College University Lahore is working on wheat for increased of ferrous and zinc bioavailability, increasing phosphorus use efficiency in wheat, enhancing fertilizer use efficiency in the wheat. Let's have a bird-eye view on our regulatory system. Biosafety laws were introduced in 2005. There is a 3-tier approval system as already discussed in IBC, TIC, and NBC. Later, event and variety hybrid approval process. Ministry of Climate Change is looking for event approval. Ministry of Food Security is taking care of hybrid adaptability and registration process. The biotech crops in Pakistan, if we just have a quick view, Pakistan is a pro-biotech country. ISAAA report maintains and mentions that Pakistan is a major, largest grower of BT cotton, and Ministry of Food Security and Ministry of Climate Change are supportive for introduction of the biotech crops in Pakistan for the textiles and other products. The regulatory and registration status is the review and the approval process is a bit slow. Government still deliberating on GM policy for the country after spending millions of public and private investments on GM crops, particularly on maize research and development. There are some major challenges in biotech. The regulatory challenges because lack of stability in the regulatory structure. Policy challenges have conducive policy on commercialization of biotech products to meet the country's growing food and feed demands and also attract the foreign investment. Enforcement of IPRI laws in biotech and seed business. We are actually lacking in awareness among stakeholders, including farmers and including all the stakeholders on board, and they are really unaware about the benefits to the end users as well. There is also a challenge by anti-government, anti-GM groups and individuals, and as according to the discussion, majority is not science and evidence-based. We need to enhance acceptance of biotech with focus on socio-economic and environmental benefits. This is the most important reason we need to work on it. We need to build the capacity of regulators and stakeholders of all the players of the value chain, and we need to actually build collaborations with public sector biotech institutions and other stakeholders. In the end, thank you very much for your patience and listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Amir. So definitely we're here to hope you we will have some developments in Pakistan soon, and also hope the advocacies in Pakistan would go well in the near future. Okay, so let's wait for a minute. Okay, so this time let's have our Q&A. So sorry, time check, it's already 2:27, so kindly bear with us. So for the Q&A, this is our for the last three sharers, Mr. Juanito Rama, Kajani, hope you're still there, and also for the Vietnam team, and Mr. Amir. Okay, so for everyone who wants to ask questions or send a comment regarding their experience, again, kindly type in the Q&A box. Okay, so let me check. Maybe we can have two questions from an anonymous attendee. So to Mr. Johnny Rama, Kajani, can you hear me?
Hello, hello.
Yes.
Hello,
Okay.
ma'am. Okay. I
Okay.
can hear you, ma'am.
Okay. So the question is that, how did you encourage your friends and relatives who are also corn farmers to use GM corn?
I introduce GM corn to our relatives, especially and our friends here in the Philippines, to plant GM corn so that we harvest too much on our expectation. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so thank you, Kajani. So definitely experience is the best thing that would really encourage everyone to also plant the GM corn here in the Philippines. And another question that we have, so this also for you, Kajani. Do you have fall armyworm problems in your corn farm? If you do, what do you do to manage it?
Yeah, we encounter the pole armyworm by using other seeds that is GM also, but not protected by pole armyworm. So we use insecticide to control the fall armyworm, which is registered in FPA. Thank you.
Kajani, for that. So, fall armyworm, I'm hearing some questions even back in the day one. So it's an emerging concern here in the Philippines as well, and in other neighboring countries. Okay. So sorry if we don't have much time, but again, for the other questions, we will try to answer this again via the Q&A box, or if we have already finished with this program, please expect for an email. Before we end, let me invite you again for tomorrow. So same link and same time, so 1 p.m. Philippine time. Tomorrow is already the last day of our program. We will be having a virtual tour of the Philippine Rice Research Institute Gene Bank and the Corteva seed processing plant. Okay, so for the winners, again, congratulations. So we will get in touch with you through an email on how to claim your prize. Okay, so once again, thank you. And it's an overtime, so thank you again. I'm Mimi, I'm Maria M. Ruby Rodriguez, and I'm your moderator. So see you again tomorrow. Thank you.